The 39 years I dedicated to teaching at Finger Lakes Community College could not have been more fulfilling. The steady transition from the original campus and storefronts scattered along Main Street, Canandaigua, to the magnificent facility that exists today has been an amazing thing to watch. The Lincoln Hill campus, with its superb natural spaces, serves as an immeasurable enhancement to the Natural Resources Conservation Program, much to the dismay of sophomores expected to identify everything that exists in the woodlot. The rich soils here support an impressive diversity of plant and animal forms. The magnificent dominant oaks have gained 12 diameter inches since I arrived in 1972. Many overmature specimens have come crashing to the earth to keep the cycle in motion. We must grant Bruce Gilman, longtime conservation faculty person, much credit for development of the College Arboretum to facilitate an even greater appreciation of diversity. I have, over the years, delighted in sharing my own space with students in a number of different classes. My property overlooking Canandaigua Lake, I suppose somewhat renowned for the daffodil extravaganza, provides a very convenient and friendly gathering place for the various groups with whom I have become so closely associated. Sometimes the weather does favor cavorting in the pond. Most generally, we share a simple meal and enjoy an occasion to see a few wild creatures and plants and animals. The glorious male wood duck on my pond, unparalleled beauty. The hooded mergansers come from time to time, and I'm delighted to see on occasion action from the animal kingdom. I missed the fox swallowing the rodent. Gone. It's take it home. The wild turkey come to cavort. Occasionally the males, young males, sit and preen and be proud. The deer like my situation quite well. The big old buck is teaching the young one how to spar a bit. Might be his son, who knows. Two bucks doing the dominance determination trick here. Great to catch him. I have taken 43 groups of students for 2 or more weeks of travel ecology. The Florida Everglades 25 times. The Pinelands, fire climax, the sawgrass prairies and hardwood hammocks. The cypress domes with the incredible cypress tree and a number of residents that might well be a cause for concern. The mangrove fringe, an incredibly productive environment. And the coral reef community itself. Occasionally we dive with our textbooks and study that astounding diversity of tropical fishes. Some of these could be cause for concern as well. The nurse shark doesn't seem too upset. By and large, the gang thoroughly enjoys the experience. Student clubs have been very active in promoting travel. With the Fleet Club, the environmental club, we visited the Channel Islands, but got rained out seriously, and ended up in the Sequoia National Park, 7,000 feet higher, looking at some of the most impressive trees on all of the planet. Another year, the club went to the north end of the Grand Canyon to control an invasive alien.
Kill them dead. What is that you're holding,
Sahara mustard.
Yeah, the Sahara mustard grows, proliferates, outcompetes the desert plants, and if fire should happen, it's devastating to the desert environment. On the way by to the Organ Pipe Cactus National Monument, of course, we took in the the Grand Canyon. Organ pipe cactus national monument is being invaded by another invasive buffalo grass in this case, which can grow sooner than the other plants, take the water that's available, and burn ferociously to do serious damage to an environment which does not support, would not support cactus. We got to be careful there too.
There is not one blade of buffalo grass remaining.
Every 3 years now, since a group of woodsmen graduated from CCFL in the mid-'80s, they have gathered for a reunion. I have had the distinct pleasure of sharing appreciation of the diversity in several places in their company, including Montana, Oregon, and last summer in Moran, Wyoming.
Hey, come on, get in here, Dan! Hurry up, Christine! Come on, Jasper! Jasper, come!
January's the student travel unique ecological communities course, Belize, Central America. The barrier reef out there is renowned for its diversity. The riverine environment provides access to the tropical forests and the incredible evidence of pre-human habitation. The howler monkey is something to behold. The spider monkey, perhaps the most agile acrobat, swinging from tree to tree. And the leaf-cutting ants that
it really does look like
ants in total outweigh all humans on the face of this earth. And these are an amazing thing to watch. Culture their food from the fungus that grows on the leaves. The diversity of birds in Belize is outstanding. Probably as many in Belize as there are in all of the continental United States. Everglades kite, iguana, the tree-climbing vegetarian lizards, and a snake or two makes a wonderful neck ornament. The harpy eagle, note the monkey-crushing talons there. You hate to see creatures caged up, but rarely does one see the jungle cats. The jaguar are elusive, and to visit the zoo is to see them firsthand. If you're fortunate, as I was, I fell off my bicycle filming these guys. They had just killed one of the cows in the Gallon Jug Ranch in interior Belize. The cows don't seem too upset, but in combination. Here in Gallon Jug, two participants from the Belize adventure subsequently returned to teach for several years in the local school. And 3 trips we have conducted through the college to Costa Rica. And I have returned since myself several times. It's an absolutely incredible environment. The riverine community in Tortuguero has the diversity of plants and animals that is typical of the richness of the tropical forests. Green kingfisher.
Wow.
Black-crowned night heron.
Yellow. Yellow.
Little blue heron. In action. A whole nest of caiman eggs hatched not long ago, and an incredible bird, one which we do not have in the New York environment, the tiger heron, one of the many herons that are so fascinating to watch. Buttressed trees hold themselves up in the wet environment, and creatures abound everywhere. Pay attention, keep your eyes open, get your camera ready, you'll catch them. Here's the lizard that runs on water, moves so fast it skitters right across the surface. Dendropides, the poison dart frog. Roast one of these, wipe a dart on it, and it's deadly poison. the three-toed sloth. The development of tourism in Costa Rica provides increasing support to a sustainable economy. As conscientious as the Costa Rican folks are to develop one of the greenest economies in the world, seeing the thousands of acres of rainforests displace banana plantations and huge tracts of favelas or poor people's housing serves as a stark reminder of global corporate power and the disparity of income. I had the good fortune to travel down under. Cool to see the road sign and then see the creature itself. These don't jump across Route 21 in Canandaigua. The emu, wild and abundant, and again in a zoo environment. The Galapagos Islands tortoise, well over 100 years old. They dated one at 187 years, not long. And my favorite, the carnivorous marsupial, the Tasmanian devil. The flying foxes, these are actually vegetarian bats, huge. The koala, terribly cute, not a native of Australia, but hard to resist. New Zealand is one of my all-time favorite places. It's been on the top of my bucket list for years. I finally got there. The incredible richness of the pastures and the abundance of sheep. But most astounding, the ferns, which to me are reminiscent of the Carboniferous age of hundreds of millions of years ago, when these fell in huge numbers into coal, what became coal seams. It's difficult to look at a fern and realize you're looking at a tree. The long-finned eels of the Coromandel Peninsula in New Zealand achieve weights of up to 50 pounds and are not safe to walk. If you were to wade among the eels with your bare legs, a big one might easily gnash your piece of flesh out. The long-finned eels were not a factor in the La Fontaine River in western New Zealand, where I had a chance to fly cast, one of my great desires. New Zealand is a land of forest production. The tree of choice is the radiata pine, imported from the coast of California and one of the most important timber trees in this down-under climate. My traveling companion and I, a graduate of 1974, came to appreciate the presence of volcanoes and the risk of earthquake. They are part of life in New Zealand. My call to New Zealand comes from the logging activities, the timber sports folks. Wonderful place to visit. But Alaska stands as my all-time favorite place to be. The incredible geology, Mount St. Elias, well over 18,000 feet. The mountain ridges buried in snow, thousands of feet deep in the valleys. Best seen from the window of a bush plane. If you ever travel to Alaska, you must take advantage of what they call flight seeing. We often hiked into the depths of the wilderness areas in Alaska and come up close and personal with the glacial valleys and snow-capped mountains and ridges replete with wild creatures. And glacial activity, medial moraines, ice falls. The Childs Glacier terminates in the Copper River. At one point, a quarter-mile section of that glacier fell into the river and rolled cars along on the other side. A 45-foot wave came up. The travel gang to Alaska, a Skookum group, not infrequently we are able to observe grizzly bears up close and not too personal. The full-curl doll ram in the Hubert's Landing area kind of lords over the high ridges. but is in full view of our group as we climb toward the peak of these mountains. The sheep themselves are abundant. The ewes and lambs travel together. Lower elevation, Copper River National Wildlife Refuge in the Copper River Delta. We find moose frequently. And not infrequently grizzly bears.
Wowie.
As soon as we get out, he's likely to run.
What's up, buddy?
Well, there goes a vole across the road.
Look at that.
Oh my god. I'm recording this. There's no way.
Are you taping this, Marty?
What the hell do you think I'm doing? Go ahead.
Fishing's pretty good in Alaska. Sport fishing and commercial fishing. We had one very successful expedition from a rented skiff. There's 160 pounds of halibut there. And we returned to
What do you think about the fishing here in Cordova?
It's awesome. Pretty good. Fantastic.
shipped
Oh,
100 pounds of it home. The value in Wegmans when we returned was $20 a pound. The law enforcement people did converge, but fortunately everybody was properly licensed. The productivity of the Alaskan waters is renowned. The fishing is very stringently regulated. The seine boats operate in accordance with the success of the spawning fish. A good haul from a seine net, many tons of fish on one purse. When I was in the Coast Guard, we saw so many fish sink a boat. Not only the people, but the wild creatures benefit from the incredible productivity. The sea lions, and the stellar sea lions, the tufted and black puffins. The humpback whales are abundant in the summertime, feed voraciously on all manner of creatures in the ocean. Visiting a fish hatchery causes us to appreciate. Backpacking into the Chugach National Forest with a small group, this was in the year of 2012, met with disaster.
We are doing an emergency evacuation.
Emergency evacuation.
On a beautiful day.
Kyler.
I punched my leg through the snow about 2 miles from the cabin, fell with my full pack on it, and wrenched my knee terribly. It was bleeding from tissue damage. My knee was the size of a melon the next morning. I called my insurance company, and subsequently the insurance agent in Georgia called Cordova, the police called the Forest Service called the Coast Guard, and away I went. This episode was actually televised on the Weather Channel with the Coast Guard Alaska program. You're not always fortunate enough to have a means of evacuation if you become injured in the wild. It's a chance you take. I rested for 3 days with ice packs on my knees while the folks remained up in the Power Creek cabin. I did feel capable, although the doctor said no, of riding in a kayak to Observation Island. One of the invasives, a grotesque creature, the black European slug. If you poke one of those with a stick, it'll exude a bucket of slime. They eat anything and everything, and they're big pests of town. They eat the dog food. Kayaking is an incredibly beautiful experience, a human-powered recreation. Coming out of the geologic cuts in the islands of Prince William Sound to encounter the scenery of the mainland is a very special situation. The marine environment in this region supports a population of sea otters, which has grown dramatically since I was here in my days in the Coast Guard. We often, as groups, contribute to the needs of the various bed and breakfast facilities. We've established a reputation of working long and hard and effectively and producing a bunch of firewood for our host. Was very welcome. The ultimate Alaskan adventure from my point of view is to step out of a bush plane 70 miles from absolutely nowhere. It's quite an emotional grab to see your only means of conveyance roll away and take off and leave you in the wild. Again, you take your chances. This particular location, a glacial outwash, the Chitna Glacier, huge overflow of water and winds creates desert-like conditions. We stopped at a yak farm on the way to Fairbanks. It turns out that this semi-domesticated creature from the Himalayan mountains is more than a match for wolf and grizzly bear predation.
Well, gentlemen, you're here at the Arctic Circle. How does it feel?
Feels pretty good.
There's a land where the mountains are nameless and the rivers run God knows where. There are lives that are erring and aimless and deaths that just hang by a hair. There are hardships that nobody reckons, valleys unpeopled and still. There's the land and it beckons and beckons. I want to go back, and I will. For the last 5 summers, my own activity and those of some Finger Lake students has centered around the Bushwhack Alaska camp. Initially, a 16 by 16 log structure, our task on the summer of 2011 was to build guest cabins for the increasing residency of Eric Salatan's guiding business. We did this all by hand with the help of the wheeler, which obviously needs a little bit of gravel fill to succeed in getting back and forth. We needed, it turns out, more than 80 tons of gravel to keep the road passable and to create foundation for the cabins we were about to build. A whole load of gravel for each of the pier blocks that serve as the support structures for the main beams. The cabins themselves of green spruce lumber and 6 by 6 square on 3 sides. While they were being built, I stayed in my tent next to the Koyukuk River, and very often crossed fresh wolf tracks on the way to the main camp in the morning. In this case, the wolves were chasing a moose. The mosquito predation is pretty serious, but bearable if you don't let them take all your blood. The 4 cabins and the sauna were the product of our work for the 2 months in the summer of 2011.
We're here in Wiseman, Alaska, which is 65 miles north of the Arctic Circle. We're right on the boundary gates of the Arctic National Park. And the village of Wiseman here only has 15 year-round residents. And yourself, Marty, and the gentleman you brought up with you, you came up here and with true FLCC style and put in some good work, and we got a nice cabin complex done and a nice wash house built, and Marty of course built all his famous chainsaw furniture, and it wasn't very long ago that this was thick forest in here, and we carefully cleared the forest out and left some of the nicer trees, and we have a really beautiful place here now.
Eric offered to let me build a retirement getaway on his property. He would buy the materials. Not a bad deal. In the summer of 2013, I came up and was accompanied by Jackie Guys, who has worked with me, traveled to Alaska on the trip and to several other places, very active in the Fleet Club, and an excellent worker, very skilled in use of the chainsaw and all of the skills necessary for building. The very first nail of my to-be tiny house on the top of the world, driven into green white spruce lumber. This turns out to be a challenge for a number of reasons. All of the structures that we've built for winter use are insulated with 8 inches or more of bats. The come along pulls the warp out of the board in so that you can nail it to the flooring and get it in there. Walls are assembled on the floor. We had trouble getting that first one up, but there it is. Had trouble on the fourth one too. Bad things do happen.
Yeah. Walk out. That's good.
Back to square one. 1 step forward and 10 steps back. Did get the wall up finally and continued the building process surrounded by the white spruce forest. Those aren't airplanes going by, those are mosquitoes.
Okay, I'm bailing out.
That metal roofing is very hazardous to handle. You don't want to get in the way if it should fall. Chainsaw carpentry, one of my first loves. Not a lot to do with biodiversity, but couldn't help but share this. I love few things more than swinging an axe. That particular tool is an English mast axe, a real antique, back in the day when the British turned the monster white pines into ship's masts. But it does make, to my mind, a very attractive timber to use for structural purposes. You can do it without leveling the sides to start with, but it's a lot quicker and more accurate. The timber frame bent, mortise and tenon joints, measured carefully and with a little bit of experience running the chainsaw, you can make the pieces fit. I was tickled when this thing hammered together, plumb, square, and true the first time without any adjusting. The knee braces pegged in place. The structure, a porch for fuel wood and hanging moose and caribou quarters. We had a couple of itinerant musicians join us from the Coldfoot camp. They were hitchhiking on the road and took great pleasure in helping out in the process of building. Steve Peck, the wood doctor from Trumansburg, joined me the summer of 2014, and his incredible skill as a carpenter put together all of the pieces that I cut from the forest with my chainsaw into the finish, the interior finish of the cabin. Installed as well the tongue and groove spruce siding that makes for a very attractive wall. One of the issues is always, when you have plywood building, is to side it with something. My experience, and I think a large measure of my insanity, are involved when you choose to create shingles with a chainsaw to serve as a siding for this building. Eric Salatan, the owner, loved the effect and facilitated the process hugely by purchasing a monster chainsaw, a big steel MS 660. Had meditative activity, produces more shavings by volume than are left in the shingles. This becomes quite an issue. The bears sleep in those piles of shavings, we've found out. Take the shingle bolts and haul them on out. The use of the shingles extended far beyond my house. A brand new industrial kitchen and dining hall, 36 by 16 feet. And at the end of the summer of 2014, all of the shingles I had, I installed on my house. The new structure, a 45-foot square airplane hangar, was in process then. 2015, I came back for a short period of time, entered the forest delightfully alone and in peaceful quiet to install the shingles and ultimately finish shingling the exterior of the house. I did have a chance to build a few pieces of furniture, but I got to return. Had trouble getting that scaffold up for the last stretch. Fire ignited, filled the sky with smoke, grounded the small planes coming from the north. They landed in the airstrip and taxied into Eric's place for shelter in the new 45-foot hangar and took refuge until the smoke cleared and they could go back to Fairbanks. And so ends this chapter of a delightful journey through a diversity of global systems with a particularly joyful ending in Alaska. My intent in sharing what I have is to inspire you, the viewer, to contemplate travel to new places. Perhaps by being mindful of our impact upon planet Earth, we can minimize our day-to-day consumption enough to justify such travel. Only when one comes to understand and love the myriad of gifts Earth provides for us will one act to protect and help sustain our global support ecosystem.